She walked in to buy a car. He told her she wasn't welcome. The next day her husband's Phantom arrived out front. Pam Bondi hadn't planned on being noticed, not in that way. It was a Tuesday, warm, breezy, the kind of Miami day that made you want to slow down and take the long way home. She wore a cream-colored blazer over a pale blue blouse, nothing flashy but clean, confident. Her heels clicked softly as she walked through the glass doors of one of the city's most exclusive car dealerships, tucked between a minimalist furniture showroom and a high-end espresso bar. No cameras, no assistants, just her. She didn't need a salesperson rushing her or someone throwing stats about horsepower or leather stitching. She'd done her research. What she needed was someone discreet, someone who could help her order a custom birthday gift for her husband, a man who didn't talk much but lit up like a kid around anything with wheels and power. Greg liked his cars like he liked his politics, classic, polished, and unapologetically American. She paused near a black Bentley parked on a raised display. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. A young receptionist behind the glass desk looked up, paused, then picked up a sleek wireless phone and muttered something too quietly to hear. Pam didn't notice she was running her fingers along the stitching of the driver's seat, lost in thought, imagining her husband's reaction when he saw the car. Then came footsteps. "Ma'am, can I help you with something?" The voice was young, male, flat, polite. Pam turned. "Yes, actually, I was hoping to speak with someone about a custom order. I saw your Phantom build options online and I'd like to put together something specific for my husband's birthday." I know who you are." That stopped her. Pam studied him. He was maybe late 20s, hair shaved close on the sides, navy polo with the dealership's embroidered logo. Something in his eyes had shifted. The customer service smile was gone. What replaced it wasn't quite anger, but it wasn't welcoming either. "Excuse me," she asked, calm but cautious. He glanced around, then stepped a little closer, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. "You're Pam Bondi, right, from Florida, Trump's legal team?" She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, but we reserve the right to refuse service. This dealership has a specific culture and standard of clientele. We believe in inclusion, tolerance, and diversity." Pam tilted her head slightly. "And how exactly does that exclude me?" The young man didn't flinch. "Some of your affiliations don't align with the values we represent. We've had clients express discomfort in the past when certain political figures make appearances here. We just want to maintain a safe space." "Safe space?" Pam blinked, more surprised than angry. For a moment it didn't feel real, like someone trying out a line they'd rehearsed but didn't quite believe themselves. "But he wasn't joking." "So you're saying I'm not welcome here?" she asked. "I'm saying," he replied, "that we'd prefer if you took your business elsewhere." Other customers had begun to glance over. No one said a word, but the silence hung in the air like static. Pam's eyes swept the room once, her lips pressed together. She didn't shout, didn't argue, just nodded once softly and turned toward the glass doors. Her heels clicked on the marble floor again, quieter this time. She didn't look back. Outside, she took a long breath. The Florida humidity wrapped around her, but her face stayed composed. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and walked to her car. She didn't cry, she didn't tweet, she just drove away. But what she didn't know was that Greg, her husband, was already waiting with a plan that would turn the situation completely on its head. Greg Bondi was already home when Pam walked through the door. Their house sat just outside Coral Gables, tucked behind a row of royal palms with wide windows and floors that clicked when you walked in. Heels. He was in the kitchen pouring a glass of iced tea, his sleeves rolled up. The man never raised his voice unless a game was on or a jack on a car was unstable. She set her bag on the entry table. "You're back early," he said without looking. Pam hesitated, kicked off her shoes, then stepped into the kitchen. "Yeah, change of plans." Greg turned, his face shifted instantly. "What happened?" She exhaled slowly, leaned against the counter, and told him every word, every look. The phrase is still fresh in her mind. Specific culture, safe space, clients expressed discomfort. Greg listened, still a stone except for the slow movement of his hand tightening around the glass. He didn't interrupt, that wasn't his way. When she finished, he looked down at the counter for a second, then he asked, "You get the name of the guy who said it?" "No name tag, but tall, young, couldn't have been older than 28. Greg's jaw moved once like he was chewing a thought. "Did he raise his voice?" he asked. "No, kept it low like he was saying something decent." Greg nodded once. "Good, that makes it cleaner." Pam raised a brow. "Cleaner." He was already walking toward the living room, picking up his phone on the way. She followed. "Greg, don't make this a thing." "I won't." He stopped, looked back at her. "But I'm not letting some 20-something cashier with a complex and a corporate lanyard treat you like you walked into a biker bar with the wrong colors." Pam gave a slight smirk. "I can fight my own battles." "You did," he said. "You walked out with your head up. That's more than most would have done." He scrolled through his contacts, paused, and tapped. Pam leaned against the doorway. "Who are you calling?" Greg put the phone on speaker. A voice picked up on the other end. "Maxwell Imports. This is Devin." "Devin," Greg said. "It's Greg Bondi." Devin's voice instantly changed tone. "Greg, haven't heard from you in months. You still got that ghost I set you up with last year?" "Yes, still running like new." "Listen, I need a Phantom fully custom delivered to Miami and I need it there by tomorrow afternoon." Devin paused. "Tomorrow, Greg? That's tell the factory I'll pay for speed. Color obsidian black interior, deep caramel leather, walnut inlays, lamb's wool mats, full rear comfort package. You know how my wife likes her legroom." Devin let out a small whistle. "You serious?" Greg's voice was calm but sharp, dead serious. Devin didn't ask questions. Alright, I'll call in a favor. Anything else? Greg looked at Pam. Make sure it's delivered directly to Palmetto Lux Motors on Miracle Mile. No drop-offs, no waiting. Roll it right off the truck in front of the showroom. Make sure someone records it. Devin chuckled. I like where this is going. Consider it done. Greg ended the call, turned to Pam and tucked the phone into his back pocket. She folded her arms. You're making a scene. No, he said. I'm making a point. She walked toward him slower now, thoughtful. You're spending almost $500,000 to prove something to a kid who probably doesn't even know how financing works. Greg shrugged. I'm not doing it for him. He walked past her, opened the patio door and stepped out to the poolside. The air smelled faintly of chlorine and blooming jasmine. Pam stood inside, arms still crossed, unsure whether to laugh or roll her eyes, but deep down she understood it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about politics. It was about reputation, about showing people that dignity didn't mean weakness. But that was only half of it. Because by the next afternoon, what happened at that dealership wouldn't just stay local, it was about to go way beyond Miami. The next morning came quiet except for the light clink of coffee cups in the kitchen. Pam sat at the breakfast bar scrolling through emails. Her phone had stayed mostly silent overnight. No alerts, no headlines, no social media buzz, just like she wanted. Greg had already gone out for a meeting, but not before leaving a small handwritten note on the counter. Let them show who they are. We'll show them who we are. Gee, she smiled faintly at the words, folded the note and tucked it in her wallet. Pam wasn't new to this. She'd been called every name in the book, a punchline, a loyalist, a traitor, a fighter. It depended on the day in the news cycle, but this was different, not because of the insult itself, but because of how casual it had been, like being judged before she even sat down, and that burned in a quiet place inside her. She glanced at the clock, 11 a.m. She wasn't expecting anything, but something about the stillness made her uneasy. Not scared, just aware. Then her phone vibrated. A message from Greg. Watch the Palmetto Lux Instagram in about 5 minutes. She frowned. What's he up to? She opened the app. The dealership's account was mostly showroom shots, monthly sales promos and staff highlights, but at the tube a red circle pulsed around their profile. They were live. She tapped. The camera was shaky at first, held by a young employee outside the glass entrance. It was already mid-broadcast. A large truck was backing up to the front doors, flanked by 2 dealership staffers who looked confused. One of them, Pam recognized him, was the same young manager from the day before. War. The live comments started rolling. Why they unloading in front? Is that a Phantom? Whose car is this? Look at the wheels on that thing. The back of the truck opened with a hiss. Out rolled a jet black Rolls-Royce Phantom, sleek, shining under the Florida sun like it was made of oil and glass. No dealership sticker, no test drive tag. It was already plated. The name tag inside the windshield read, for Mr. Greg Bondi, paid in full. There was no press release, no spokesperson, no anger, just delivery. The camera caught a glimpse of the young manager again. His face was pale, his mouth didn't move. Another staffer leaned and whispered something and his shoulders stiffened. Someone off screen asked who ordered that. The camera turned as a silver sedan pulled into the parking lot behind the truck. A man stepped out. Greg. He was in a dark jacket, sunglasses on, expression unreadable. He didn't wave or smile. He just walked up to the car, opened the door, sat inside and adjusted the seat like he'd done it 100 times. The young manager walked over, clearly unsure of what to say. The mic on the phone barely caught it. You here to see someone? He asked. Greg didn't even look at him. He adjusted the rearview mirror, then calmly replied, no, I'm just here to remind you who you. Turned away. The live feed cut off seconds later. Pam stared at the screen, speechless. Her phone started vibrating again, this time with text. Friends, family, people from law school, even reporters she hadn't spoken to in years. Was that your husband? They really kicked you out yesterday. This is going viral. She set the phone down and picked up her coffee. No comments, no public post. She just sipped quietly, eyes focused on the garden outside. Greg returned 2 hours later. I think that made the point, he said, setting the keys gently on the counter. Pam looked at him. It was a little theatrical. He smiled. So was the way they dismissed you. She didn't argue, but neither of them expected how fast that video would spread or what kind of storm was about to start brewing online. By late afternoon, the clip had made its way to Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and a handful of group chats. Pam would never be part of it. Had been reposted with shaky commentary, sarcastic memes, and even slowed down versions of Greg's reply, captioned with things like coldest line of the year. Pam didn't even have to say anything. People were doing the talking for her. Meanwhile, the dealership tried to clean things up. Their Instagram went quiet. Comments were turned off. The original live was deleted within hours, but it was already too late. Copies were everywhere. Even a local blogger had written a short piece titled Miami Luxury Dealer Refuses Conservative Figure Gets Delivered a Phantom in Return, and it was catching fire inside the dealership behind the tinted glass. The mood had shifted fast. The young manager, his name was Aiden Brody, was pacing inside his office. He wasn't just nervous, he was scared. He'd gone off script. The dealership didn't have an official political stance. His statement to Pam personal, and now it was about to cost them. A senior exec from their parent company had already called twice. Why would you say that? She barked over speakerphone. I was trying to protect the space, Aiden stammered. She's controversial. I thought it would make people uncomfortable. You thought? She snapped. You thought you could speak for the entire company. You don't think, Aiden, you execute policy, and now your statement has us trending for the worst reasons imaginable. He rubbed his temples. I didn't know who her husband was. I didn't expect him to buy a $500,000 car and drop it on our front steps. Yeah, well, guess what? Neither did we. She hung up out in the showroom. The staff was whispering. Customers were still walking and pretending not to care, but glancing sideways at the Phantom now parked across the street. It hadn't moved since delivery. A few employees had started joking quietly behind the coffee bar. Man, she got kicked out one day and then dropped a rolls the next. She didn't drop it, her husband did. Same difference. That's love, bro. Inside his office, Aiden slumped in his chair and stared at his computer. He typed out an email apology 3 different ways before giving up. Across town, Pam and Greg were sitting on their patio again. I should have seen it coming, she said. I've been political furniture for years. Someone always has something to say. Greg leaned back, letting the sky darken above them. That's not the point. She glanced at him. Greg continued, people can hate your views, disagree with your choices. But when a kid in a branded polo thinks it's his job to gatekeep a showroom, he's not making a stand, he's making a spectacle. Pam looked at the glass in her hand. Still, I didn't want attention. This whole thing, it feels petty. Greg turned his head slightly. What's petty? Is being humiliated for existing. She didn't say anything she didn't need to. Inside, the news was starting to bite. A local reporter from Fort Lauderdale was requesting a quote. Conservative bloggers were spinning the story as proof of industry bias. A few even suggested boycotts, though Pam privately rolled her eyes at those. She wasn't interested in punishment. She wasn't trying to be a martyr. She just wanted to buy her husband a birthday car. That's what stung the most in Greg. He never said it out loud, but the gesture had less to do with revenge than respect, a way of saying you're not alone in this. I see you, I protect you. He picked up his phone later that night and sent one more message to Devin the broker. Thank you, the delivery was perfect. Don't say anything publicly. This wasn't a PR stunt, Devin replied. Understood, but just so you know, that clip, it's blowing up. Greg replied, let it. But while the internet played referee and the dealership scrambled behind the scenes, something much bigger was starting to shift, and not just online. The public was watching closely now, and people were taking sides. The following morning, Pomelux Motors opened at 10 a.m. sharp like always, but the energy was different. Customers weren't just walking in to browse or ask about warranty extensions. They were looking around, whispering, asking, is this the place? From the video, 2 guys in their 20s came in wearing aviators and cargo shorts. Not exactly the typical clientele for a dealership with a $300,000 minimum inventory. They walked straight to the front desk and asked, hey, where's the Phantom? From the clip, the receptionist smiled uncomfortably. That vehicle's already been moved. Damn, one of them muttered. Would have been cool to see it. They left without even grabbing a brochure inside the manager's office. Aiden Brody was spiraling. The corporate email thread had grown overnight, with words like liability, brand damage, and client discrimination bouncing between executives. Someone from legal had requested a full transcript of every client interaction from the past week. The dealership's general manager, an older guy named Trent who usually stayed in the background, finally walked into Aiden's office and closed the door. Tell me exactly what you said to her. Aiden's mouth was dry. I told her we reserve the right to refuse service. That her presence might make other clients uncomfortable. Trent folded his arms. You said that to Pam Bondi in a dealership built on client relationships. She's a public figure. Controversial. I thought you thought wrong. Aiden didn't respond. There wasn't a version of this where he looked good outside. Another customer asked to speak to someone about the car in the video. When told the Phantom was no longer on site, the customer shrugged and left without a word. Meanwhile, across Miami, in a quiet conference room on the 18th floor of a law firm overlooking Biscayne Bay, Pam was sitting with a friend, Marta Gibbons, a retired judge turned consultant. No cameras, no lawyers, just coffee between 2 women who'd seen what power could do when it got lazy. Marta sipped slowly. You sure you don't want to respond? Pam shook her head. If I say something, it becomes a war. Then they get to play victim. True, but people are talking. They want your side. Pam leaned back. They're filling in the blanks just fine without me. Marta studied her for a moment, then nodded. You always did know how to wait out a storm. Pam gave a half smile. I've just learned when silence costs less. Meanwhile, the dealership's problems were growing. A local station aired a short segment that evening titled, Did Politics Get Bambi Banned from Buying a Car? It wasn't flattering. The footage showed the delivery truck, the stunned reactions, the car slowly rolling down the ramp. Voice-over commentary danced between legal rights and public perception. Then came the phone calls. Customers started canceling appointments. A high-profile buyer postponed a delivery until the dealership clarified its stance. A luxury SUV that was scheduled for pickup stayed on the lot untouched. Trent held a meeting that night with the entire staff. We don't take political sides, he said flatly. We sell cars, we build relationships, that's our brand, and whatever this was, that wasn't it. Nobody mentioned Aiden by name, but everyone knew. Later that evening, Greg pulled into their driveway. He'd taken the Phantom out for its first proper drive just around the city. A few looks, a couple of compliments from people who didn't even know what they were looking at. He walked inside, dropped his keys on the counter, and found Pam in the living room flipping through the news with the volume low. You see the Channel 7 piece, he asked. She nodded briefly. He sat beside her. You okay? She thought for a second. It's strange the video didn't show what happened inside, just a response, and somehow that was enough. Greg looked at her. It was more than enough, he said, but the internet wasn't done. And while Pam stayed quiet, more people famous and not started speaking up. Suddenly the story wasn't just about a car, it was about who gets treated how and what happens when the tables turn. 3 days after the delivery, Pam's name was trending again, not because of a press conference, not because she said anything, but because someone had tagged her in a screenshot from a closed Facebook group. It was a post by a woman named Karen Finley, a Miami resident who'd happened to be in the dealership the day Pam was turned away. She hadn't recognized Pam at first, but after seeing the video she pieced it together. Her post read, "I was there that day. She didn't argue, she didn't raise her voice, she just walked out. I didn't even know who she was at the time, but now I wish I had said something." Within hours the post was shared thousands of times. News outlets started picking it up. Suddenly the story had a second wind. It wasn't just a clip anymore, it was a narrative, a woman wronged not by words but by tone, by the assumption that she didn't belong. And the public was eating it up. People began filming themselves talking about it. Some agreed with the dealership, others were furious. One TikTok, a stitched video showing the walk of shame turned into the rite of dignity, got over 3 million views in 24 hours. Still Pam said nothing, no tweets, no interviews. She met with friends, had lunch, took phone calls, and each time someone asked, "Are you going to speak on it?" her answer stayed the same, no. But behind the scenes her silence spoke volumes. Brands began to reach out. A watch company wanted to gift her a timepiece, a private car club extended a free lifetime membership, a conservative think tank asked if she'd be interested in using the moment as a platform. She declined all of it. "This wasn't a stunt," she told Greg, "I just wanted to buy you a car." He smiled. "Well, you bought me a car and a lesson." Back at Palmetto Lux Motors the fallout was getting harder to manage. Trent, the general manager, sat in a back office with 2 corporate reps from Los Angeles. They'd flown in to deal with the mess. "We're considering placing you on administrative leave," one of them said to Aiden, who sat across from them, pale fingers tapping the armrest of his chair. "I made a mistake," he said, "but this backlash, it's politics. You can't punish me for trying to protect the store's image." The other rep, a woman in her 50s, leaned forward. "You didn't protect the image, you damaged it." That woman didn't shout, she didn't protest, she didn't film anything, and now everyone sees her as the reasonable one. Aiden looked away. "They didn't fire him." Not yet, but he knew the writing was on the wall. Every day fewer customers were walking in, and every day more people came just to take pictures outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the car that started the storm. One man even proposed turning the video into an NFT at home. Pam sat on the back patio with Marta again, this time with lemonade instead of coffee. "You know what I keep thinking?" Pam asked. "What's that?" "If I'd yelled or made a scene, they would have had a reason to paint me as the problem." Marta nodded. "But you didn't." Pam looked out at the garden. "That's the thing, they expected a fight. They were ready for the loud version, but they weren't ready for someone just walking away. That's what shook them," Marta said. Greg walked out just then, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He handed one to Pam. "You hear what that dealership's offering now?" She raised an eyebrow. 10% off for first-time buyers. Social media promo codes, they're scrambling. Pam gave a quiet chuckle. "Discounts won't fix reputation." Greg clinked his glass against hers. "No, but maybe silence will keep building yours." But even then Pam had no idea that a national outlet was preparing to run a segment about the incident, turning this quiet moment into a conversation far bigger than any of them expected. It aired on a Thursday night, national TV primetime, a 5-minute segment on a major news magazine show. Introduced with that smooth voice, everyone recognized what happens when a former attorney general walks into a luxury dealership and is told she doesn't belong. This week a quiet moment turned into a viral message. About politics, pride and power. They replayed the now familiar clip of the Phantom being delivered, slowed down the moment Greg stepped out of the car, added a soft instrumental in the background to drive the point home. A journalist narrated the story like it was a parable. They brought in a cultural commentator who described the act not as petty but as this elegant resistance. Another guest said this wasn't about left or right, yeah, it was about dignity. "We're so used to outrage we forget how strong quiet can be." Pam watched the segment from her living room, feet tucked under her on the couch, hands wrapped around a lukewarm mug. She didn't smile, she didn't frown, she just watched. Greg sat next to her, flipping through a pile of unopened mail. "Is it weird?" he asked. "What, seeing your life narrated like a case study?" Pam shrugged. "I've seen stranger things on cable news." He chuckled. The phone buzzed, a message from an old colleague, someone who hadn't spoken to her in years. "I just saw the story. You did more by saying nothing than I could have." With a speech Pam didn't reply. She didn't need to. The dealership, in a last-ditch effort to regain footing, posted a vague statement the next day. It didn't name her, it didn't mention the incident, but it was clear who it was about. "We are committed to creating an inclusive environment where all customers feel welcome. We recognize that recent events have sparked conversation and we are listening." The comments were shut off within an hour. Aiden Brody was quietly moved to a different location. Greg never parked the Phantom in the garage. He kept it outside, polished under a custom car cover, parked just a few feet from the edge of their lawn. Neighbors would occasionally stop and ask about it, and Greg would just say, "Birthday gift from my wife." But even after all the media attention, even after the segment aired, Pam never tried to turn the moment into anything more. She didn't use it for clout, she didn't turn it into a speech, she didn't try to win the internet, because sometimes the most powerful message is silence backed by action. Not everything has to be shouted. Not every insult needs a reaction. Sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one that doesn't say a thing but makes everyone else rethink how they speak. That dealership, they'll forget eventually. They'll change staff, change policies, change the color of their walls, but that clip of the fandom rolling down the ramp, that will stick around because it wasn't a show, it wasn't vengeance, it was restraint wrapped in leather seats and horsepower. A reminder that the way you carry yourself when no one's watching speaks louder than the noise that comes after. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. The world's loud enough. Be the one who moves different, who chooses respect when it's not given, who holds their head high even when others try to drag them low. Pam never wanted to be a symbol, but for a moment, without raising her voice, she became one anyway, and the world listened. If this story moved you, if it made you pause, share it with someone who needs the reminder you don't always have to shout to be heard. Subscribe for more real stories that show what character looks like in the moments that matter.